So we've gone over this numerous times, and some people, when I cover this topic, go, "Yeah, I get you. We've seen it," and then there are other people who are like, "Why on earth is this topic relevant? Why on earth should it be taught, let alone in schools?" Um, of course, you've seen the title of the video. You know what this is about: British Empire. Why? Because the right wing and the far right love to use well, historically, they love to whitewash and cherry pick parts of the British Empire, and we've covered this numerous times over Brexit. You see this a lot of people's attitudes when they talk about Britain doing well abroad. They're referring to the British Empire, not Britain as it is today. This is a large problem, and this really needs to be tackled. In fact, this is what I'm going over today, because I think this does need to be addressed, and I think that this does need to be taught to school children, the realities of the British Empire. So, British Empire is still being whitewashed by the school curriculum historian on why this must change. So, Jeremy Corbyn has recently proposed that British school children should be taught about the history of the realities of British imperialism and colonialism. This would include the history of people of colour and as components of and of contributors to the British nation state, rather than simply as an enslaved victims of, it. As Corbyn rightly noted, black history is British history, and hence its study should be part of the national curriculum, not segregated in a single month each year. This is a welcome proposal because, as an academic who teaches modules on South Asian, imperial, colonial, and global history, I face an uphill struggle at the start of each new academic year. Many of the undergraduates who greet me know virtually nothing about any of the subjects I teach. These are students who are educated through a school history curriculum that focus entirely on English political and religious history, with bits of the 20th century European history thrown in. These are bits of which figures who can easily be cast as evil, Hitler or Stalin for example, and students who I encounter know very little about Britain's past, let alone Britain's connections with the wider world or the history of the world outside of Europe. In fact, this is actually quite true. I like my history. I love my history. But if I want to try and get history books that are not based on Britain, let's say I want to go and get a history of the Dutch Golden Era, it's virtually impossible to try and find one. I have to go massively out of my way to try and find one, and sometimes you're looking at books that might have only had one very limited run and can sometimes cost upwards of about £200 to £300. Now, again, that's one of my weird hobbies I have. I like history books, or I like going to hunt down and find some of these books, but there you go. And even another perfect example is a history of the Byzantine Empire. Trying to find a book about the history of the Byzantines that doesn't just focus on the Fourth Crusade or on just one particular ruler. For example, very often, the most often ones you find are about Justinian the Second. That's very often it. But Byzantium, as a history, it's of that region. It plays huge impacts even today. So I find it really fascinating, but you can't find them. So I am absolutely all for school children being taught about other people's history. That's what they should be taught. And again, you see this all the time. Sometimes to be taught a subject of history, you have to go to a diploma level. And then you have, like this guy, the academic says, an uphill battle to try and teach these people about these subjects, because they're, they're not known about, or they just don't exist in our, in books that you can walk in or get, or you have to go to like extreme lengths to try and find them. So anyway, we continue. And therefore they know practically nothing about empire and its legacies, including in Britain. The histories they have studied, the texts they have read, were virtually all about or by white men. So they know nothing about the history of women or the histories of people of colour either. And these include those who have played the most important roles in shaping Britain's past. Corbyn's proposals would not only begin to redress the phenomenal gulf between academic history and the English school curriculum, they would also help students to see people of colour as historical agents. The proposals may also help challenge the exclusivist and the essential ways in which students are taught to view both Britain and the wider world. These proposals, however, have not been met with the type of outrage many have come to expect from white, middle-aged, right-wing conservatives. According to the bullish Brexiteer and Conservative MP Tom Lewingham, Corbyn's proposals demonstrated that he was, quote, ashamed of his own country, and that they were more interested in talking down rather than celebrating the immense amount of good we have done in the world over many centuries. That's historical revisionism right there. Bad things, according to Lowington, undoubtedly happened in the name of the empire, but Britain should be proud of its many legacies, including in its role of abolishing the global slave trade, not to be outdone by his equally either bullish Brexiteer Jacob Rees-Mogg, also touted out that the abolition of the slave trade on Nick Ferrari's LBC show, also noted that there were, quote, no blots on Britain's colonial history, and that it had some good bits that were really wonderful. That is just absolutely insane. It's such a denial of history and what actually happened. So such responses demonstrate a profound ignorance about the British imperial and colonial history, particularly about the impact of empire not only on the colonised but also on the colonisers as well. It is also a state of denial about empire that makes views of those like Loughton and Rees-Mogg to say that empire had good bits is to deny that what empire actually entailed, namely the conquest and subjugation of millions of people. It erases the tremendous structural and symbolic violence that empire unleashed. To praise Britain's role in abolishing the slave trade is only possible if we deny the various forms of economic, political, social and cultural violence that enabled the continuation of such trade in Britain and its empire, as well as the ongoing legacies of such forms of violence. To view empire as having good and bad bits also entails viewing the past in simplistic terms. And to claim that students should only study the good bits of the past also begs the question of whose good bits exactly. It also assumes that to teach school children the bad bits is to make them ashamed of their country's past. Yet, as Germany has demonstrated, teaching children to integrate difficult histories does not make them hate their country. It can serve instead to promote anti-nationalist nationalism, in which the very tenets of nationalist thinking, including viewing the past in the nationalistic terms, are critiqued. As my own students have told me, being able to interrogate difficult histories, such as the history of empire, to explore the myriad contradictions between people in different parts of the planet, or to study the writings of Indian thinkers and actors, and has given them a much better understanding of themselves and the place in the world. Or, as one student put it, it has enabled them to grow as a person. What more can you say than that?